This story never really ended. It just went quiet. Jeffrey Epstein's crimes are not in dispute. For years, he abused and trafficked underage girls. He was protected by wealth, power, and silence until he wasn't. And even after his death, one question never went away. Why do so many records remain hidden? In recent months, that question has landed squarely in Washington, not because of new crimes, but because of who decides what the public is allowed to see. At the center of this moment is House Speaker Mike Johnson. Johnson has repeatedly said that the Epstein files should only be released if the information is credible. He argues that releasing everything could harm innocent people, that names could appear in files even if those individuals committed no crimes, and that once reputations are damaged, there's no way to undo it. On paper, that sounds reasonable. Protect victims. Protect due process. Protect the innocent. But critics hear something very different. They hear delay. They hear discretion without a clear definition. And they hear the same institutional language that has protected powerful people for decades. The controversy intensified when Congress considered a rare move a discharge petition. It would have forced a vote to release more Epstein-related records, bypassing House leadership entirely. Johnson opposed it. He warned that forcing the Justice Department to release material it had already reviewed could create what he called new victims. People whose names appear in files, even falsely, could be publicly destroyed. That phrase, new victims, sparked outrage. Because to many Americans, the victims in the story are already known. They are the girls, the survivors, the people whose lives were permanently altered. And that's where trust begins to fracture. Then came comments that made the situation even more complicated. In interviews, Johnson suggested that Donald Trump had been helpful to law enforcement during the Epstein investigations. His wording led some to believe he was implying Trump had acted as an FBI informant. The reaction was immediate. Within days, Johnson walked it back. He said he didn't mean Trump was wired or formally working with the FBI. He said he was repeating what had been reported before, that Trump distanced himself from Epstein and cooperated when asked. He admitted his language may not have been precise, but by then, the damage was done. Because once ambiguity enters a case like this, people stop listening for clarification and start asking why the confusion exists at all. This isn't happening in a vacuum. The Epstein case has a long history of institutional failure. In 2008, Epstein received a plea deal so unusual, it's still studied today. It protected him, and it included language that shielded unnamed potential co-conspirators. That deal was approved by then U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta. Years later, Acosta would become Secretary of Labor. No court has ruled that those events were connected, but the perception never disappeared, and perception matters. Johnson has also cited national security concerns. He argues that some records could expose intelligence sources or methods, that releasing everything could compromise future investigations. Again, that explanation follows legal precedent, but for a public already skeptical of secrecy, it feels familiar, especially when other issues of national security appear to receive far less caution. Then there's the dispute over a reported birthday letter allegedly sent Epstein in 2003 and attributed to Donald Trump. When asked about it, Johnson said he did not believe the letter was real. He said Trump denied it, and that was enough for him. To critics, that moment reinforced a larger concern: which claims are questioned and which are dismissed. As pressure grew, some conservative voices urged Republicans to stop talking about Epstein altogether. They argued it was a distraction, a political trap, a waste of time. Johnson echoed that sentiment. He emphasized party unity, legislative priorities, moving forward. But telling people to move on doesn't make questions disappear, especially when those questions involve power, secrecy, and children who were never protected when it mattered most. This debate isn't just about documents. It's about who controls the narrative after the crime is over. It's about whether transparency is granted or managed. And it's about whether Americans are expected to trust institutions that decide what's credible, without ever explaining who makes that call. The Epstein files remain closed in many ways, not because the public forgot, But because the system still hasn't decided how much truth it's willing to release. And that silence continues to speak.